All right, so let's talk about the lymphatic system. This is the lymphatic system over here, and what the lymphatic system is it's composed of lymphatic vessels. These lymphatic vessels there. It's composed of lymph nodes, these little nodes that interrupt the lymphatic vessels there, and also other lymphoid organs as well. Lymphoid organs and lymphoid tissues. So the spleen, for instance, that we talked about is a lymphoid organ. The thymus is a lymphoid organ. The tonsils are a type of lymphoid tissue, so we'll talk about those too. But what does the lymphatic system do? Okay, the lymphatic system, what it does is it picks up leaked fluid from blood vessels and it returns it to the blood. Okay, maybe a feature that or a function that you didn't know about before. So because of this, without the lymphatic system, our cardiovascular system would simply stop working because too much fluid would be lost. And I'll show you some more specifics of that coming up. Also, what the lymphatic system does is the lymphatic system provides the structure for the immune system. That is, all of this lymphatic system here is going to provide a structure for the trillions of white blood cells of the immune system. So some textbooks and whatnot combine the lymphatic and immune systems. I like to separate them. Okay, this is the lymphatic system here, and then the immune system uses this structure for the white blood cells of the immune system to live in. So let's look at some of these different components here. We have the lymphatic vessels. The lymphatic vessels are a widespread network of vessels that are going to collect this leaked fluid, and then they're going to return it back to the cardiovascular system. And actually, they're going to return it to the cardiovascular system right at that location there. Then you have lymph nodes. Lymph nodes are small, intermediate lymphoid organs that are in line with the lymphatic vessels. So these are all lymph nodes right there, and you can see that they're right in line with the lymphatic vessels. And then the last thing that we have is the lymph. And the lymph is the fluid that's collected by the lymphatic vessels and that's going to be returned back to the heart. So on this note, when we're talking about lymph nodes, lymph is flowing through these lymphatic vessels back on its way through the heart. This lymph is trickling through these lymph nodes. And as we'll find out, and like I mentioned earlier, there are white blood cells in these lymph nodes. And so as the lymph travels back to the cardiovascular system, these white blood cells are able to survey the lymph for pathogens and that sort of things. Here's some different areas that we find lymph nodes. We have the cervical nodes. You guys know the cervical refers to the neck. Okay, we have a cluster in the axillary or armpit region, and then we have a cluster in the inguinal or the groin region. And these are just some pictures of that. These are all different lymph nodes up in the head and the neck region. These are some down here in the inguinal region. Then I like this picture a lot. This shows in the pectoral and the axillary region the different lymphatic system here. And what I want to point out is that these lymph nodes, these lymphatic vessels, they're pretty superficial. Okay, they're on top of all this skeletal muscle here. So they're right underneath the skin, kind of in the connective tissue underneath the skin. All right, so let's talk about how we collect this lymph, how the lymphatic system collects this lymph, and what it does once it gets in there. So what we have to look at here is this is a capillary bed, and you'll know this when we go through the blood vessel portion. But here we have a blood vessel. This is called an arteriole, and it branches and it gives way to these capillaries. So these are all capillaries. These are microscopic blood vessels, and these are the blood vessels. They're really thin, and so what that allows for is it allows for exchange of materials to occur between the blood vessels and between the cells that are outside of those blood vessels. So capillaries is where the exchange of materials occurs at. And what happens is, it branches and it forms this capillary bed, and this is called, I guess, the arterial side. And then it collects itself here, and it exits the capillary bed through the venous system, through a venule. Now what's happening here is that this blood that's in the arterial and in this initial capillary region is under high pressure, and that actually forces fluid out of the capillaries. That's what this is saying right here. Plasma is exuded. It's released from the capillary bed, and this represents the plasma that the cardiovascular system is losing. Now some of that re-enters the capillary bed kind of on this venous side of the capillary, but it's not 100% efficient. And in fact, as much as 3 liters of fluid escapes from the capillary beds of the body every day, and we simply can't lose 3 liters of blood. Our cardiovascular system can't function like that. So it's the job of the lymphatic vessels to collect this escaped fluid and return it to the cardiovascular system. And that's where we see this lymphatic vessel right there. And these lymphatic vessels are all intermingled within the cells of the body here and intertwined with the capillary beds as well. So this is a picture of that. This is the here's blood coming into the capillary bed. Here's blood exiting the capillary bed. And this is where all that fluid's getting lost. So you can see these lymphatic capillaries, and these lymphatic capillaries are blind-ended. What that means is that they're dead-ended right there. Okay, that's a dead end. So these blind-ended lymphatic capillaries are intertwined within the capillaries of the body. And these lymphatic capillaries have very high permeability, and this allows them to pick up the escaped fluid. And that's what this is kind of showing here. We have all these cells, and these blind-ended lymphatic capillaries are picking up leaked fluid. Because of this high permeability, they're able to pick up this leaked fluid, and that allows it to enter the lymphatic system. And then once it's in the lymphatic system, it travels up back toward the heart, where it's going to be returned to the cardiovascular system. Now, the reason these cells the lymphatic capillaries have high permeability is because they have these kind of flaps in the lymphatic capillaries, and that those flaps allow not only fluid but materials to go in there as well. Pathogens, cancers, anything, large molecules like that are present in the interstitial fluid are able to enter the lymphatic capillaries. And that's intentional too, because we want it to go into the lymph system. Well, not cancers, because if a cancer does that, then it means it's metastasizing. But if a pathogen does that, then and it enters the lymphatic system, that's where the immune system's going to come into play, and those white blood cells that are hanging out in the lymph nodes. They're going to detect those pathogens, and they're going to alert the immune system as a result of that. So this is a kind of schematic of about how this occurs. Here's the heart right here, and the heart pumps blood out of the arterial system to the systemic circulation, out the aorta and whatnot, and then these arteries branch and branch and branch, and they eventually go to the capillaries of the body, and then the capillary beds are drained by the venous system, and the venous system returns blood to the heart. So what this lymphatic system is doing is they're picking up this leaked fluid, and they themselves are returning this leaked fluid back to the cardiovascular system, and they're going to return it to the blood vessels in the venous system right before it goes back into the heart. And this is that's what this is showing right here. So let's see. Here's the heart, and we have 2 veins that make their way into the heart, not directly, but 2 of the major vessels near the heart that are going to be returning blood to the heart are the right subclavian vein and the left subclavian vein. And what happens is that these lymphatic vessels that contain lymph, they merge and merge and merge, and they eventually form two ducts which return lymph from the entire body into these subclavian veins. So the lymphatic vessels merge, and you eventually get one of these is called the right lymphatic duct. And this returns lymph from the body, in particular from this area of the body, returns that to the right subclavian vein, and then that returns it to the heart. So the right lymphatic duct drains that side of the body. Now, on this side of the body, or the remainder of the body, okay, all of these lymphatic vessels merge, and they eventually form the thoracic duct. And the thoracic duct deposits that lymph into the left subclavian vein, and then that returns it to the heart. Okay, so these are the main vessels that are returning this lymph to the heart. Now, unlike the cardiovascular system, the lymphatic system does not have a pump to create pressure differences which propels fluid through the vessels. So the cardiovascular system has a pump which creates pressure, which allows blood to flow through the vessels. The lymphatic system doesn't do that. Okay? It doesn't have that. It doesn't have a pump to create pressure. So the question is, how is this lymph able to go against gravity? Let's say you're collecting lymph down at the hand there, or down at the foot. How's that lymph able to go against gravity to be returned to the heart when there's not a pump to create that pressure? And the answers to that I'll show you here. But I will say that these lymphatic vessels, this is a one-way system. So lymph is only going to flow toward the heart. It can't flow backwards. And so there's a few mechanisms here that allow the lymph to be returned to the heart. And these are the same mechanisms that are going to promote venous return in the blood vessels, because the venous part of the cardiovascular system is very low pressure as well. But back to the lymphatic system, the first thing, we have one-way valves to prevent backflow. So here we have lymph that's going up through this lymphatic vessel, and it pushes these one-way valves open. And then when that lymph gets above the valve, it pushes down on the valve, and the valve closes. So these are one-way valves, and that prevents backflow. And you can see that here's these one-way valves here, and that allows lymph to flow one direction through the lymphatic vessels. You also have something called skeletal muscle pumps, and skeletal muscle pumps are going to propel this lymph up against gravity. They're going to create the pressure which allows it to travel through the lymphatic system. You also have something called a respiratory pump. When you breathe, you have changes in the pressure in the chest region, in the thorax, and that moves lymph. And then there's also smooth muscle in the walls of some of these lymphatic vessels, and those can contract and rhythmically propel lymph up through this system. So this is a diagram of those skeletal muscle pumps, and what we're looking here, we can say maybe these are the calf muscles here, the gastrocnemius muscles. And what we're showing here is this is a vein. Okay, this is the venous system. So these skeletal muscle pumps are working on the venous system, but you also have lymphatic vessels that are running through here that these skeletal muscle pumps are also creating pressure for. So what happens is that when your skeletal muscles contract, they create pressure on the venous system and on the lymphatic vessels. And what that does is it forces, in this case, blood, but also lymph, upwards through these one-way valves. You notice that these one-way valves are preventing, in this case, venous blood from going backwards, but this also happens in the lymphatic system. So skeletal muscle pumps are a critical component for getting this lymph back to the heart. even partial interference with this lymphatic drainage that I've been talking about can lead to severe edema. Okay, and edema is swelling due to the accumulation of fluid. And an extreme example of this is elephantiasis. And I want you to watch this video on it. And I believe there's some a study question or two on it. But basically what happens is in these tropical regions, there's a mosquito. It's a pretty good mosquito there. There's a mosquito that carries a parasite. So that's a parasite inside the mosquito. And when the mosquito bites these individuals, the parasite gets into the body. And what it does is they infect the lymph nodes and they block the flow of lymph. So lymph is not able to return back up to the cardiovascular system. So you get this accumulation of fluid in especially the lower extremities. And if this happens for long enough, then it can chronic edema. Then it can cause thickening of the skin, and kind of that's how this got this name, elephantiasis, because this thickening of the skin and this swelling of the skin. But what they're doing, and this will describe it in the video, but they're giving these individuals in these areas antiparasitics, and so that the number of worms in the individual, it's supposed to kill those worms. So then if a mosquito does come and bite this individual, it can't transmit that to other individuals. All right, so the high permeability of these lymphatic capillaries also means that cancerous cells can be taken up through the lymphatic system, and this allows them to metastasize, which means to when they break off and travel to other areas of the body. So here we have a cancer, and this cancer is in the interstitial fluid region, I guess, and part of that can break off and enter the lymphatic system. So now you have a cancer in the lymphatic system. And again, the problem is that now it can travel to other parts of the body. So lymph nodes can become secondary cancer sites when metastasis occurs. And lymphoma is a cancer of the lymph nodes. And you can see in the cervical region here, we have in this boy we have some tumors that are present in the lymph nodes. Now these tumors are usually not painful, and that helps distinguish cancerous lymph nodes from those that are infected by microorganisms. When the lymph nodes are infected by microorganisms, they become really painful to the touch. So this is the lymphatic system being used for cancers to metastasize is a problem. It's an issue. And so there are procedures that you can use to determine whether or not specific cancers have used the lymphatic system to metastasize. And one of those procedures is called a sentinel lymph node biopsy. And you guys are gonna watch this video on it right here. And there is I believe there's some questions on it as well. But this is used with breast cancer, patients with breast cancer, to determine if the cancer is metastasized. So what a sentinel lymph node is it's defined as the first lymph node to which cancer cells are most likely to spread from a primary tumor. And there can be more than one sentinel lymph node. So I'll just give you a preview here. Here we have a tumor, and we're concerned that this tumor might break off and enter the lymphatic system, enter these lymphatic vessels here. So what happens with the sentinel lymph node biopsy is that a radioactive substance or dye is injected into the breast, into the fluids around the breast, and then that radioactive substance or that dye is taken up by the lymphatic system. And the first set of nodes that take up that dye or that radioactivity are defined as the sentinel lymph nodes. Okay, and it's important that you inject this around the tumor, this dye or substance. And so the idea here is that now this dye or this radioactivity, it goes to the first set of nodes, these sentinel nodes, and we can identify this dye or this radioactivity. Then we can take them out of the body. So what do we do when we take them out of the body? Well, then we examine them more closely. We put them under a microscope and we look for the presence of cancerous cells. Now, what happens if you get this biopsy back and there's no cancer in it? There's no cancer in there. Well, obviously that's good, and what it indicates is that the breast cancer has not metastasized. But if you take the biopsy, you get these sentinel lymph nodes back, and there's tumors in there, there's cancers in there, then one, it tells you that it has metastasized. But what do you do next? Okay. Well, the next, and I guess maybe I'll just I'll leave that and we can talk about it. But it's metastasized, and you just don't want to stop there with the sentinel lymph node. Now, also part of the lymphatic system are lymphoid organs. And these are a collection of organs, and the primary purpose is going to provide the structural basis for the immune system. So here are these lymphoid organs here, and what they consider the primary organs are the thymus and the red bone marrow here. So the thymus, and on the exam and on the study questions, I just want you to be able to match each of these lymphoid organs with their description. You don't have to know specifics about it, super specifics, but be able to associate each of these lymphoid organs with their descriptions. So the thymus, for instance, is where lymphocytes, in particular T lymphocytes, are going to mature. And maturation involves something called immunocompetence and self-tolerance that we can talk about later. Red bone marrow. Red bone marrow is a lymphoid organ. What happens here? Well, this is the site of blood cell formation, of hematopoiesis. Then we get into what are called these secondary lymphoid organs. And out of these secondary lymphoid organs, lymph nodes are considered the most important of these. Okay? So as I mentioned earlier, lymph is going to travel through these lymph nodes, and you have these white blood cells that cause macrophages, called macrophages, that are going to cleanse the lymph of debris and pathogens as it trickles through these lymph nodes. Let's see. The spleen. The spleen is involved in the breakdown and recycling of red blood cells, in particular macrophages, which are white blood cells, are going to be responsible for that. And then we have the remainder of these fall under what we call mucosa-associated lymphatic tissue. So mucosa refers to the mucous membranes of the body. These are the membranes that line the open body cavities. And so this is lymphoid tissue that's strategically located in these mucous membranes of the body. The tonsils, okay, in the back of the mouth, in the throat, those are part of this, what we call malt. The Peyer's patches in the small intestine, the appendix, these are all part of this mucosa-associated lymphatic tissue. Okay, so if we look inside these lymphoid organs, all of these lymphoid organs except the thymus are dominated by what we call lymphoid tissue. And lymphoid tissue is this reticular connective tissue and also the immune cells that reside in there. So here we have the reticular fibers, and then like I showed the other day, here's some lymphocytes, and also here's some macrophages right there. So the immune system lives on these reticular fibers in this lymphatic tissue. And this is a great surveillance point for the white blood cells. This is a human lymph node. Now, sometimes these lymph nodes can become overwhelmed by the foreign pathogens that they're trying to destroy. So, for instance, when large numbers of bacteria are trapped in the nodes, these nodes can become inflamed, swollen, and tender to the touch. And these swollen, infected nodes are called buboes. Okay, and this is, you can distinguish these from lymphatic cancer because these lymph nodes, when they're infected, they're extremely painful. So these are a couple examples of this. Here's some infected lymphatic tissue in the inguinal region, and this is caused by a bacteria which is spread by sexual contact. It's not the same bacteria that causes genital chlamydia, but nevertheless you can see those swollen lymph nodes. And here's some buboes right there. This is caused by the bacteria Yersinia pestinus, which lives in a variety of small rodents, and this is what the plague was all about. Okay, back in the 1400s, killing millions of people, and this was a sign of the plague. All right, and then we'll pick up with the immune system that lives within the lymphatic